Hello and welcome to BDO's Budget Bulletin. I'm with Helen Jones, tax partner at BDO, and she's going to help us sift through some of the detail that sits behind today's budget. Helen, before today there was a lot of discussion about Brexit being the big shadow overhanging the budget and restricting the Chancellor's ability to actually do and spend too much. So with that in mind, was it a good budget or a bad budget?
Well, it was a giveaway budget, so lots of spending on defence, NHS and infrastructure, and actually some real tax savings for key voters with Brexit approaching.
You talked about some key voters benefiting from today's budget. Could you give us a bit more detail about who the winners were?
Well, in particular, the young and the lower paid. So what the Chancellor is doing is he's accelerating changes that were due to come in April 2020, and they will now come in April 2019. The first thing he's going to do is increase the living wage to £8.21. And then looking at the tax rates, he's going to increase the personal allowances to £12,500, and the 40% tax rate band will only start at £50,000. So a good deal for most.
You mentioned this was a giveaway budget, so the Chancellor has to find the funds from somewhere, and he seemed to be targeting property again.
Well, there were two unexpected changes to the capital gains tax relief you normally get on your main home. So for most people, when you sell your home, the gain is exempt. But there are some reliefs included in there which will be abolished. So firstly, lettings relief. If you've rented your house out and you haven't lived in it when it's been rented out, in future you won't get any relief for that period. So that's a cost of £11,000. And the second relief is when you've moved out of your home, you would normally continue to benefit from the exemption for another 18 months. But with effect from April 2020, that 18 months is going to be reduced to 9 months. So after 9 months, you might start accruing a capital gains tax liability on the disposal of your property.
But there were a couple of changes to stamp duty as well.
There were, but both of them were favourable. So the first one relates to the additional 3% stamp duty charge. So this is where you have a second property, but if you sell your original property within 18 months, you might get that 3% back. Maybe in recognition of the slow-moving housing market, with immediate effect that 18 months is being extended to 36 months. The second change relates to first-time buyers. Currently, first-time buyers buying a property worth £300,000 could be exempt from stamp duty. This scheme is going to be extended for shared ownership arrangements with properties worth up to £500,000.
It ended up being a jam-packed budget from the Chancellor, but beforehand there was lots of rumours of things he might introduce that he actually didn't end up doing. What were those?
The two biggest rumours were around pensions and capital gains tax. There were absolutely no changes to pensions in his speech, and for capital gains tax, there was a worry that the relatively low 20% general rate of capital gains tax would increase. It didn't. And there were rumours that entrepreneurs' relief, which is a favourable 10% rate of tax, would be abolished. Now, he did make some changes to entrepreneurs' relief. There were two. They're quite technical. The first one was a change to the ownership requirements, where you own shares and dispose of shares. Currently, you have to have a 5% right to the ordinary share capital of a shareholding to qualify for this very valuable relief. That definition's been extended to include the fact that you need to have a right to 5% of the proceeds on disposal and 5% of the assets on winding up. The second change comes in 2019. Currently, you won't need to own these business assets for 12 months to qualify for the relief. In 2019, this period is going to be doubled to 2 years. So they're quite, as I say, they're quite detailed, but they will affect people.
We saw some loopholes tied up today, particularly around off-payroll workers. Could you give us a bit more detail around that?
So the government have already announced and implemented some changes to off-payroll workers in the public sector. So this is basically where people use personal service companies or intermediaries to avoid national insurance and the obligation to employ PAYE at source. So these rules are going to be extended and applied in future to large and medium-sized employees. So I expect the Chancellor's hoping for a big increase in tax from this change.
Well, Helen, thank you for your time and for taking us through all the detail on today's budget. And thank you for watching BDO's Budget Bulletin.